Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And you're in for a depressing episode.
Mine has a happy ending. I'll say
yours
that.
does?
Yeah.
Okay. Mine has a hopeful-ish ending.
Okay.
I think, kind of, sort of, maybe, almost. But it's pretty depressing, so. And we just want to give a quick shout out to some amazing patrons. Jessica, Sam, Ethan, and Marissa, you guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. You mean the world to us. You truly do. And yeah, we're apparently going to be covering some super sad topics. Robin, what are you going to be covering this week?
All right. I'm going to be covering the Twitter killer.
Interesting. I'm going to be covering the Savo Man Eaters. So, pretty good stuff. I guess we can just jump right into it since you are like ready to go to talk about this, dude. So,
I have to prep for a final exam after this. So.
Right on. Well, you take it away.
All right. So, we know you guys come here for the true crime content. Probably not really. I don't know. We're called Scaryish. We don't know what you guys are here for. We cover a lot of stuff. Ghosts, hauntings.
I think everyone's here for you, to be honest.
But what I do know is that this week, I'm here for the true crime. So instead of something from ages ago in history, this one is extremely recent, actually. And it's something that I'm not too sure many people have heard of. But I only say that because I've never heard of it really. I think I heard of stuff in passing, maybe like a quick article that I scrolled past because I was like, okay, whatever. Right. So trigger warning. Before I get into my episode or my topic here, it does involve, the topic of suicide. So if you guys don't want to listen to that, you can probably skip like 30 minutes and go into Adam's man-eater topic. So my topic this week is Takahiro Shiraishi, or better known as the Twitter killer, as a lot of media named him. You know, the media outlets are the ones that give people their nicknames, right?
Right.
So yeah, he got dubbed the Twitter killer.
I've never heard of this person.
I've never heard of
the nickname either.
Yeah. So I was just like, wow, this is absolutely fascinating. Okay. So you obviously know it's really recent because Twitter is involved. Shiraishi was born October 9th, 1990, so he's only 30 years old.
He's 5 years younger than me.
He's younger than me.
Wow.
He grew up with his younger sister working odd jobs after graduating high school. He worked at a supermarket for a couple years there and then quit, tried to get a job through a placement agency and never showed up on his first day. So this guy is definitely not the most reliable person.
Have you ever not shown up for your job on the first day?
No. Never.
I have once. Yeah.
Did you know?
What do you mean, did I know? Of course I knew. I just said it.
Did you forget?
No. I got offered a different job.
Okay. No, I've never done that.
Yeah, I got offered a different job, had to pick between the two. I called the guy who had recruited me and offered me the job and said, like, hey, before my first day, can I just talk with you? Because I wanted to go over what I've been offered, basically to see if he would offer me more money.
Yeah.
He never called me back. So I was like,
wow.
You never call me back, then I'm not showing up. And I just didn't show up. They never called me.
Was it a bank or something?
No, it was like a salesperson job. It was actually when I got offered the job down in Bullhead City. For the manager job, okay. I got offered that other salesperson job for some random company.
Oh, I remember that. Gotcha. Okay. Well, obviously you shouldn't trust them anyway. They never called you back.
You don't call someone back when they say like, oh, I have questions for I start on my first day. That's a huge red flag. So
yeah. Anyway, so here's how the legacy of this Twitter killer goes. Shiraishi lived in an apartment in Zama, which is a city in central Kanagawa Prefecture in Japan. It's about 25 miles southwest of Tokyo. What he would do is go online and stalk the world of Twitter. He would pick out tweets and people that seemed suicidal in nature. So he would hunt these people, right? He would then contact these individuals and would ask them to come to his house so he could watch them commit suicide. So it's a pretty messed up thing for him to do, obviously. Because who does that, you know? His Twitter handle also loosely translated to Hangman. I saw a bunch of people posting pictures like of his Twitter, and it was like Hangman Pro or something like that. That's what his Twitter handle was. I don't know. But it's just terrifyingly creepy that he this was like his persona that he created, you know?
I cannot imagine being so low and having someone reach out and be like, rather than say something encouraging, just be like, can I watch you kill yourself? That is so awful.
Yeah, his profile actually read something along the lines of, I want to help people who are really in pain. Please DM me anytime.
Wow, fuck him.
Yeah. And it's totally false advertising because he had no intention of actually helping anyone in the usual sense, like when you want to help someone, you know what I mean? It was more of a twisted sort of help. And I want to do a sidebar here and say there's actually a movie that I watched recently called Vampire, that was released in 2011. And it's about a biology teacher that lures suicidal women online into meeting him under the guise of like doing it together, you know?
So maybe came from a bit of inspiration from, or like they took inspiration from this guy.
Maybe. Oh, from this guy that I'm covering?
From the Twitter killer, yeah.
No, because it's in 2017.
Oh, fuck. Jesus.
Yeah. So in this movie, what he actually does is he drains these people of their blood and then drinks it.
What?
Which is why it's called Vampire. So it's a pretty gross movie, kind of a mindfuck sort of movie. But if you're into weird indie kind of movies like that, you can look it up. Nothing supernatural about it at all.
So you're saying there's no actual vampires?
No. It's just him being a weirdo. And it only has a 5 out of 10 on IMDb. So, you know, you're prepared going into it. I've already watched it. And
you've been warned.
I'm going to warn you now. It's pretty fucking bad. Okay. Continuing on. Anyway, so this real life internet creep took things too far. He would offer these people assistance in it or just watch, which is so weird. He even tweeted, quote, I'm looking for someone to die with me, end quote. He would tweet stuff like that. And that's something that creepy teacher in Vampire would tell people. He wanted to find people that wanted to do it with him. And that's how they lure people in. Because they have no intention of actually doing it. They just are trying to pluck out these vulnerable people.
God, that's so horrible.
And
it's like a different level of horrible that we haven't had on the show before.
And I wonder if it's a tactic that is used by a lot of people out there.
There are a lot of people that exploit those who are like depressed and really deep down, like suicidal and have serious issues. It's how a lot of cults get built, in fact.
Yes.
It's like you target people that are in that mindset and you try and like just make them decide that life is worth living, but only if you are like the center of their universe. Which is kind of like what Charles Manson did and a bunch of other different cults that we can go over. But this person's doing it specifically just to try and say, like, let me watch you die, which is so awful.
Yeah, it is really, this guy's a monster. So there were those that said that there were red flags about this person. There were friends that would say, like, there was one that told investigators that he would indulge in choking games with school friends. And as future victims showed signs that they had been strangled to death, it really didn't look too good for him that he used to, you know, do that stuff with. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have ever heard of any choking games, but I remember in middle school, the boys would do this weird thing where they would choke each other out until they passed out. That was the thing they would do to each other.
So what we did as a guy who was in middle school is I don't know if I should say this. Right.
I don't know where this is gonna go.
I don't want to give anyone instructions on how to do this, but it's not like you can't fucking Google it.
But I don't know. Just don't.
Basically, what it involved was you would just take a bunch of deep breaths. I'm not going to say in what way, shape, or form, or how
you
many.
Like hold your breath or something?
You hold your breath, and then someone would pinch your neck. It wouldn't be choking. In fact, I don't think anyone ever used like a choking motion, but it would basically be like if you like just pinch someone's neck with two hands, and then you would kind of pass out. You'd still be conscious, but it would be like you're almost in sleep paralysis for like 10 seconds or so. And I remember that happening when I was in like sixth grade. You come to super quick.
You come to really quick, but it's just like, this is supposed to be a game. And I don't understand why that is.
I don't think I've literally never heard anyone who did it call it the choking game or a game. It was just like, hey, you want to pass out really fast?
It's just so stupid.
It's like,
how many brain cells do you kill by doing that?
A lot.
You know what I mean?
You kill like 1 million.
Oh my.
You kill like 1 million brain cells. Every time you go unconscious, like if you get knocked out, you kill like 1 million brain cells.
Oh my god.
That was the rule of thumb I was given by a doctor.
Don't do that.
It's a horrible thing to do.
Don't let your kids
do that. It's not fun. It's not a great experience. If you've ever experienced sleep paralysis, it's that. Like, it's just that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I never understood it. But apparently that's not something that just Americans do. Apparently people do it in other countries too. So before this guy lived in Zama, he actually worked in Kabukicho, an hour drive away, which is, it's another red flag for his character because of what he did there, what his job was there. He was a scout that would lure women into brothels to work in the sex industry.
That was his job?
That was his job.
That's the job he decided to show up for?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I watched a video recently about host clubs. Host clubs, are where you can go and, chat with guys. Women come in, or whoever comes in, chats with these hot guys, and these guys just try and, kind of sell themselves and make you buy them drinks and do all this stuff. And they make bank money.
The dudes?
The dudes make bank money.
How come no one told me about this? I've never heard of this before.
But yeah, there's a lot of places that are like that, where they kind of, a lot of sex industry stuff, not that the host clubs are sex industry. It's just something that's not, out of the ordinary, brothels and things like that. Not necessarily out of the ordinary. Okay. So, that place that he worked in happens to be Tokyo's biggest red light district. AKA, sex business district. That includes strip clubs and things like that. Apparently people had started warning locals about him because he would be luring these women in, right? To start doing all this stuff. He was described as being a quote unquote creepy scout. So after building up a reputation like that, it's understandable that he chose to move an hour out in August of 2017. So what happened was he got caught when one of these missing women, their brothers, started an investigation into his missing 23-year-old sister. He started finding these Twitter messages from this guy. So he decides, I'm going to bring in help from other people. A woman assisted him by contacting this guy on Twitter and sets up this fake appointment. After setting this up, they get police involved because they're obviously something's going on here. He wants to set up this appointment for this to happen. And you have all the message evidence, you know what I mean? On November 2nd, 2017, police show up at his apartment wanting to know where this missing woman was. And to this, Shiraishi just said that she was in the freezer.
Wow.
He straight up was she's in the freezer. And
that's some Jeffrey Dahmer shit.
Upon further investigation, they found the bodies of 8 women and 1 man in his apartment, all of which had been dismembered.
I was going to say, how the fuck do you store 9 human bodies?
So he split the bodies into 8 different storage containers, full of different body parts. He confessed to dismembering them in his bathroom with the intention to destroy the evidence. So he disposed of flesh and organs in the garbage, but keeping the bones because he didn't want to get caught. So he didn't want cause flesh decays, right? It rots, but bones don't. So he didn't want to have that big physical evidence out there.
This is horrific. Holy shit.
Yeah, he's a monster. This guy is a monster. Okay. So it was only then that the neighbors started coming out of the woodwork, stating that they had experienced horrible smells coming from his apartment. One person said they smelled what smelled like sewage. It was like a smell that they had never smelled before. He apparently had tried to cover up the smell by pouring cat litter all over stuff. That covers up cat shit.
So he's an idiot too.
Okay. Once a cat pees in your litter, there's a limit to how much that stuff will cover up. It just starts smelling like cat pee. There's no way you're going to cover up the scent of dead bodies with cat litter. There's no way. Okay. So even more, further police investigation found out that, they found evidence that he had actually been walking with one of these missing women on October 23rd of 2017. So there was evidence of him with one of these people already. And then once he was caught, it was pretty easy for the police to backtrack all his Twitter messages. There's all this evidence. Right. How are you going to hide it? You know what I mean? His victims ranged from the ages of 15 to 26, all the murders having been committed between the months of August and October of 2017. So that's August, September, October, 3 months. He did all that in 3 months, 3 or 4 months, if you count from like the beginning of August to the end of October. Even
if you did that, that's only 3 full months.
Yeah,
you know?
So it's like right after moving to that area, he just started off. The single male victim that they found had actually, it wasn't one of the ones he wanted. It had actually been the boyfriend or a friend of one of the women that he'd killed. He'd come to kind of confront him. He went to his apartment to confront him about his girlfriend or friend's whereabouts. And the guy just decided to kill him because he was caught by this dude, right?
So up to that point, these people are showing up and had arranged to kill themselves in front of him, correct?
Yeah, or something like that.
Right.
Or doing it together or something.
But this particular guy shows up to confront him about where his girlfriend is, and this is the time, this is the one that we for sure know. He's like, I have to murder this person.
Yeah.
That's so fucking crazy.
Yeah. So all these victims, they're really, really young, and it's really sad that a guy could talk them into his trap so easily. What's even more troubling and depressing is that Japan has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. In 2019, it had the second highest rate among G7 developed nations. Those are countries that include the US, Canada, the UK, Germany, countries like that.
Right.
And to be ranked second highest is nuts.
Begs the question, who's the highest?
I think South Korea or something like that.
Okay.
Not only did he murder these people, but he sexually assaulted them and stole all their cash. Supposedly off one person, he stole the equivalent of about $3,400.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's so much shit, dude. Supposedly, before he committed these murders, he confessed to his dad that he felt like life had no meaning. He even tweeted as much. He tweeted all this stuff, right? He confessed to the murders pretty quickly as soon as they came and started investigating, right? He confessed to all the murders. He claimed that he was motivated by sex, which is pretty common in a lot of murder, I think. He wanted to lure these vulnerable individuals. This is him confessing these things. He lured them in through manipulation, sexually assaulted them, and he didn't hold back from fulfilling his fantasies, which is fucked. On October 1st, 2020, he pled guilty to 9 murders.
Jesus.
400 people showed up to watch the verdict. There were only 16 seats available for people to sit in. 400. So it's like 400 people crammed into this room.
So at this point, he's basically a media sensation. Like everyone knows who he is.
Once
and what's
this happened, it was like, it blew up, you know, everybody was watching this case. He was sentenced to death on December 15th, 2020, with no intention to appeal his sentence. So he was just like, I'm guilty. He pled guilty. You know, he pled guilty. He got, his sentence, and he was just like, I'm not going to appeal it. Just do what you're going to do, you know? His lawyers tried to argue that the victims had agreed to be killed, but Shiraishi was like, there were bruises on the back of the victim's head. It means that there was no consent, and I did it so that they wouldn't resist. He is like, he's nuts, okay?
He's confessing, and then he's pointing out, like, the evidence shows that I did this.
During the trial, he said, quote, it was easier for me to convince people with worries and other issues and manipulate them to my way of thinking, end quote. And he was just tanking any possible defense his lawyers could possibly cook up. And I think he did those things because he's like, I don't want to be around anymore. Everything is stupid. It sucks. It's
like he said to his dad that he thought life had no meaning. Yeah. And then he went and started killing people, almost like test his theory. And now that he's confirmed whatever he felt was like evil and awful, he's like, just end it. Like, I don't know why you're trying to defend what I did.
Yeah. So that's all stuff that he said in court, you know. He also said, quote, I'm sorry for having killed some of the victims with whom I spent a lot of time and would like to apologize to these families. But for the others, I don't really feel a deep sense of regret. In any case, I'm sorry only because I failed when I got caught. If I wasn't arrested, I will not be regretting anything, end quote.
He would have kept doing it.
Yep.
100%.
He's a goddamn monster, dude. It's just, I can't even understand the logic.
He sounds legitimately like a psychopath.
Yeah.
Like he's just someone who has no emotion, and because of that he can say, I do regret killing the ones that I spent time with, but these ones I don't really regret.
Who starts a Twitter to do that?
Not to mention the fact that after he says all that stuff, he's like, if I wouldn't have gotten caught, though, I'd feel no regret. There's absolutely no regret based off what he did. It's based off the fact that he's going to face consequences for it.
But at the same time, he's like, just give me the sentence. I don't care. You know, it's very confusing. And that's what makes this case so interesting, that it's like, he says these things, doesn't regret things, and then is like, just give me the sentence. I don't care. Just get it over with. Whatever. I
mean, being a psychopath, he probably views that as like, that's just the logical next step. I got caught. I admitted to it. Let's move on to the next step of whatever this is. He's not feeling afraid of the consequences. He's just regretful that he's going to have to face them because he was trying to get away with it.
Yeah. In Japan, death sentences are carried out by hanging, and the execution dates are not made public until the sentence is carried out. So he hasn't been executed yet. He's just sitting there waiting. Apparently there were 3 executions carried out in Japan in 2019, so it's not something that happens very often. That being said, though, apparently perpetrators of multiple murders, robbery murders, or rape murders in Japan are usually sentenced to death by hanging. Japan is one of the few developed nations to retain capital punishment.
Right.
Are we one of them?
We have it. It's based off the states. We talked about this earlier this week.
This case led the Japanese government to increase their support to those that may be experiencing suicidal thoughts. Twitter also amended its rules to state that users should not, quote, promote or encourage suicide or self-harm, end quote. So this case did change things.
It's really awful that you have to put rules in for people who are just so deeply troubled, you know? It's like we had to put a rule in that you shouldn't promote self-injury or self-hate.
Well, people, if you just say stuff like, you should go shoot yourself on Twitter.
Well, obviously you shouldn't say that.
Well, I know, but if you say that as a joke on Twitter, Twitter's just like, no, banhammer.
We had a friend that got banhammered for saying something. It wasn't even like, go hurt yourself. It was like, go look at the things you've done in the past. And they got banned for promoting self-harm. And it's like, if you're telling someone to reflect on the shitty things they've done in the past, that's not promoting self-harm, that's promoting self-reflection, and he still got banhammered.
Twitter is really on that shit. They're just like, that's like, everything is just banhammer. It's, I don't know. But then there's some stuff that slips through the cracks that I'm like, why has that not been banned yet?
Some stuff literally just gets let through because they're like, this person's too famous or has too big of a following for us to apply any rules to them. Up. Yeah, it's just, they pick and choose. I barely ever fucking use Twitter. Actually, I hate Twitter.
I don't know how to use Twitter, so it's fine.
You know how to use Twitter, you just don't use Twitter.
It's just like, I follow people, right? And then I look through stuff on Twitter, but I never keep up with it. You know how there's some people that are on every tweet from the people that they follow? I follow too many people. Whenever I log into Twitter, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, I'll see the top 5 tweets, on my most recent, and that's all I'll see.
For like 5 years, I couldn't get notifications that the people who I was trying to follow were tweeting, even though I had them enabled. So I was like, Twitter fucking sucks. I hate Twitter.
I just
never used it.
Okay. In 2019, there were about 20,000 suicides in Japan. That's a record low.
Wow.
For Japan. So maybe their effort in increasing the support is working. In 2021, the Japanese government appointed Tetsuji Sakamoto as the first Minister of Loneliness.
Wow.
They have a Minister of Loneliness. He was appointed
Me in my 20s, man, that's what I felt like I was the minister of.
He was appointed to work on reducing loneliness and social isolation among citizens. And this came as a result of an increase in them during quarantine. So during 2020, during quarantine, they were like, we need to do something. So 2021 comes around, they're like, Minister of Loneliness, work on making it so people stop isolating themselves and get more help and get more interaction.
Or if they have to isolate themselves, still feel some sort of human connection.
Right. If we could get a minister of loneliness out here, I think that'd be great.
We're going in the right direction when it comes to dealing with mental health struggles,
Yeah.
Which I do think is great.
If any of you folks are experiencing suicidal thoughts, please contact the suicide hotline in your respective country. We would hate to lose any of you. And please don't fall into the hands of a creepy killer that is trying to lure you into their trap.
No matter how low you ever get, don't let anyone who ever contacts you and asks you something like this convince you that it's one, something worth doing, and two, that they're allowed to watch.
Right.
Fuck them.
Yeah. No.
Like straight up. But yeah.
No, not actually.
Don't actually fuck them.
But like.
They can go to hell.
Yeah, exactly.
And he will, for sure.
Oh, yeah. This guy's going to hell.
So yeah, that was exactly as you promised. Morbidly interesting, absolutely terrifying. So good stuff, Robin. Way to lead us out with that wonderful topic.
Yep. Now we're going to go into our commercial break. Hopefully give you guys a minute to jump off of this wagon and onto Adam's wagon on the other side.
Let's reload to happier, not really, things after this commercial break. And we're back. So this week, I am fully being controlled by folks on Facebook at this point. If you recall, last week my topic was about the Jersey Shore man-eater, the shark that inspired the movie Jaws. Thought it was absolutely fascinating. I did receive some kudos in the Facebook group from the spooky friend named Cody, suggesting that I cover another man-eating creature, actually a crocodile/alligator. I can't remember which one it was. And I jokingly replied to them that I could just make this man-eater May. And immediately after making that joke, I realized it was a really fucking good idea. So then spooky friend Edward suggested another man-eater topic, and that one was just way too good to pass up. So this is basically the story of how Man-Eater May was born.
Okay.
So that is what we are in now, and I'm really excited that those are the topics I shall be covering for the month of May. And this week I will be covering the nightmares known as the Tsavo Man Eaters. So, first and foremost, like any good story of an animal with an affinity for killing human beings, this story also inspired a movie, just like the man-eater from Jersey Shore inspired Jaws. Some of you may have heard of a little film called The Ghost and the Darkness.
What's
and
that?
In a synopsis I received from Robin, it's about ghosts and darkness.
Oh, those are two different movies.
No,
that's one movie?
The Ghost and the Darkness is one movie. I brought it up to Robin 2 days ago when I saw the suggestion.
Okay.
And so I told her this is going to be my topic tonight. And she's like, oh, it's about ghosts. I was like, no. And she's like, oh, I thought there'd be ghosts and darkness. Spoilers, there are no ghosts.
Okay.
I think I've never actually seen the film all the way through. I've seen a lot of chunks of it, bits and pieces, but I haven't seen any clips whatsoever of this movie in like at least 20 years.
When Adam says I'm like an Etch-a-Sketch, it's like, it's not a lie.
It's very true.
I don't even remember that conversation.
So, the movie is about man-eating lions. Yes, spooky friends. Man-Eater May continues with a story of two man-eating lions, or sharks of the land, as they're known to literally everyone. It's a phrase that's been spoken a bunch of times before just now. But yeah, two man-eating lions in particular are the Savo Man Eaters. So keep that in mind. A grand total of two. I know that there's a lot of things that happen here where you think, man, this must be a giant pack. No, it is literally just two. So, the story takes place back in 1898. Y'all remember in 1898, right? Leading causes of death were pneumonia/flu, tuberculosis, and GI infections. Interesting note about 1898, the fourth leading cause of death back then was heart disease, which is now the number one leading cause of death as of 2019. I pulled 2019 because I couldn't find 2020 numbers, but they would have been all COVID and shit. Just ahead of cancer, actually. So, what's even more interesting is the rate of deaths from 1898 for heart disease is lower than it is now, where it's the number one leading cause of death. So it's not like per capita, blah, 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 blah. You adjust the numbers. Of course, everything's better. Like, no, literally, you are less likely to die of heart disease in 1898 than you are in 2019.
Well, it's because we have a lot more unhealthy foods now.
Exactly. Also, these statistics are U.S. specific, so it doesn't apply to you if you live in, say, like Kenya or someplace like that. Why Kenya, you ask? Obviously, because that's actually where the story takes place. So, in 1895, the British actually decided to lay a railroad that would run 660 miles across the African continent from the port of Mombasa to the eastern shore of Lake Victoria. In 1896, a year after they had decided they were going to do this, construction began on this railroad. And honestly, reading about this particular topic, going through all the things that they dealt with, reminded me a lot of what I learned about the construction of the Panama Canal. So I don't know what you folks know about the Panama Canal, but essentially it was a solid idea that led to a lot of issues from not understanding the area where this structure would be created, to break it down loosely. So in the case of the Panama Canal, this is what I remembered, and I looked it up and I was totally right, and I was so happy my 6th grade history teacher fucking nailed this stuff. Shout out to Mr. Henderson. So the first attempt to dig it was made by the French in 1880. So Count Ferdinand de Lesseps said,
What?
"Oi, let's dig a big fucking ditch in Panama."
Oh,
That's the best French accent I could do. "I'm tired of sailing all the way around South America. Oi!" So they decided they were going to go dig this canal through Panama.
I just want to be so offended right
so
now.
you don't go all the way around South America. And while that topic would also kind of fit into Maneater May a little bit, it's a little bit more history than Maneater, because eventually one thing in specific happens that would like plug it into this sort of topic. And that is that an area like Panama is known to spawn a literal fuck ton of mosquitoes.
Really?
That would spread yellow fever and malaria. And so the original workforce would drop like flies. In 8 years, they had barely made any progress. They had lost so many people that all their funding was cut. And Count Ferdinand was told, just get the fuck out of there and abandon the project. Side note, Count Ferdinand was chosen to do that, to dig the Panama Canal, because he was the one who made the Suez Canal, which we're all familiar with because of that huge fucking traffic jam that happened recently. So it's not like this guy just didn't know what he was doing, but it was a very challenging project that ended in basic disaster. Eventually another group would come in and finish the Panama Canal, and once it was finished, it basically is in the state that it was then now, with like some updates as technology advanced.
You know what else is a big fucking disaster? A ship getting caught in the Suez Canal.
Seriously fucking was. It's a goddamn mess. So, snap back to 1898 in Kenya. The idea of creating what is known as, or was known as, the Uganda Railway, as it would be named, sounded like it made sense. But there would be challenges that were unexpected, particularly of the local wildlife. The first 2 years were easy peasy lemon squeezy, relatively speaking. Everything changed in 1898 when they reached the Tsavo River. They had made roughly around 130 miles of progress on the railroad by March of 1898, when a British Army colonel named John Henry Patterson was brought in from India. His purpose was to make the railroad and basically turn it into a bridge going over the Tsavo River. He had done stuff like that previously in his life. They said, "You're the guy for this job. We need the railroad to go over in the form of a bridge over this river." It's a fairly wide river. I think I read that it was like 300 yards wide, fairly deep. They're like, build the fucking bridge. Like, that's what you're here for, build the bridge. And like in Valheim, the video game, the best thing to build on was stone.
Okay.
I think I've only gotten through 4 bosses.
Oh my god, okay.
So, Patterson had to source the stone from a spot around the bridge site, which he located, and it was around 5 miles away.
Wow.
So, they were bringing the stone in to be the foundation of the bridge, but he noticed a problem almost immediately after arriving. And the problem was that workers kept abandoning the job. He had actually brought a bunch of folks from India with him to help him on this project that had helped him previously.
Okay.
And then there were a bunch of locals that were helping build this railroad that had essentially been given jobs, in quotations, which is like, you know, do this fucking job because we told you to. That's about as much niceties as were around in 1898 during this project. So most of the labor, like I said, were from folks around the area. So it's not shocking to learn that aside from being provided this job, they weren't cared for basically at all. If they went missing, it was assumed that they just decided to nope the fuck out for personal reasons. And when Patterson showed up, he began asking locals, WTF is up with all the workers leaving? And he was told very directly, there is a lion taking them.
So they're not just leaving.
They're not quitting. They're not disappearing. They're being taken by a lion.
Oh my god.
So he assumed initially, based off of the folks he talked to, like he went to management, was like, hey, this is what they're saying. And they're like, it's bullshit. So he assumed, okay, well, it must be bullshit. I've never heard of lions doing that. But it's like any other person from the beginning of like an action thriller or horror movie. Like, the obvious solution that the people are telling you must be bullshit.
Yeah.
But he doesn't just dismiss everything outright, because literally every single day there were sightings coming in from his people he brought from India that he trusted and the local workers stating that lions were coming close to his supply line. So at this point, he is actually kind of worried, because he's thinking these workers are not abandoning their post, that there are lions in the area that are not happy that they are there. So, to put it bluntly, they had crossed into the lions' home, and the lions were having none of it. They started searching for and locating workers that had previously thought to be abandoning their posts, and realizing they didn't abandon their posts, they were killed by the lions and dragged off. So they start finding human remains when they start looking for them. All these folks that they're looking for, by the way, were found dead and killed by the lions. In some cases, they were just not found at all. For the people that were found, they were partially or completely eaten.
That's messed up, dude.
In most cases. In some cases, they were just killed and left there and picked at by carrion eaters like vultures or buzzards.
Yeah.
And it's very odd for a lion to kill something as large as a human being and then not eat it. Because these aren't hunger killings. The lions are literally hunting human beings.
Is it possible that they were rabid at all?
They catch them. They were not.
Okay.
So it wasn't just like they were showing up when they came to a particular area. I'm using the word hunting very literally. These lions were absolutely hunting human beings. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So the operation had a very assembly line feel, okay? So you have the bridge that you're building.
Okay.
And you have a base site at the bridge. And then you have the site that you located the stone that you're going to use to build the base 5 miles away.
All right.
They're not sending out parties to go 5 miles, get some stone, and bring it back. He put bases, like, intermittently between the 5 miles.
Okay.
So that it would basically be like a military supply line.
So you're like handing off, handing off.
Exactly.
Okay.
It definitely has the assembly line feel of like you move things along. They create railroad tracks, not like the big railroad tracks, but like the ones that are temporary that you can pick up off the ground.
You can't see Adam's hands, but he's
I
doing
like the
the
two
little
hands
handles.
going up and down like you'd see in an old-timey movie.
Pumping the little cart to go.
Exactly. So they're spaced out so they could pass the materials along but stay in their spot. And when the day's work was done, they had small camps nearby their personal stations that they would rest. The lions were coming into the camps as they slept and attacking the humans in their tents.
While they slept.
While they slept. Literally killing humans and dragging them off into the night. So not after long, Patterson realized what he was dealing with. He was dealing with man-eating lions. These things are straight up attacking human beings. They're not starving. They're just coming after humans.
Did the humans do something to them to make them pissed off?
Yeah, they fucking dug into their habitat.
Okay.
They're literally where the lions live, and the lions are like, "Oi, this is our home. Fuck off."
Oh my god, okay.
That's my best African lion.
So I can see why the animals are pissed.
Yeah, and I'll get into some theories about why they were so vicious at the end of this. So, not after long, when Patterson was like, all right, we know what's going on here, he started having folks standing guard during the night, and workers were arming themselves with whatever sort of tools they had available to defend themselves in the case of a lion showing up. They didn't all have guns. It's not like the fucking Old West. Only a few people had guns. Most of these people just have the stuff on their back, anything that they can use to survive. They had like rations, you know, and like cantinas, and maybe something to work on the railroad. They didn't have like, they weren't hunting lions. They were there to build a fucking railroad. So when the lions began having unsuccessful attempts at one camp, they'd move to the next camp. They were smart enough to know, like, paying too much attention at this one, let's try the one further down the way. Side note, this is all supposedly true. There were hundreds of witnesses of this shit that survived. So when they were unable to kill what they were hunting for, they began to hunt different things, different creatures at the camp. In particular, horses, donkeys, goats, and cattle that were all nearby to these camps were being mauled to death and in some cases dragged away and fed upon by the Savo Man Eaters. So a month later, so Patterson's brought in March. It is now April of 1898. The railroad had just decided we're not going to wait for the bridge to be done. We're going to go to where the bridge will eventually connect and start building again. So they're going to keep building and basically say, like, when you finish building the bridge, connect it to the piece that's on the other side. You know what I mean? So they could basically keep pushing the progress along. and the problems at the bridge wouldn't hold up the entire project.
Okay.
So because they decided that they're going to continue building further on, they took most of the workers and they left behind a few hundred to finish the bridge. When they did that, Patterson decided it was best to relocate all of the camps to a central area at the bridge rather than have them all spread out like he had previously. It seems like a logical thing to do. You're being hunted, there's safety in numbers, right?
You would assume so.
You would assume so. But they were not safer. Lions apparently have this thing where they really prefer to have a very concise hunting ground, and it had basically been provided to them by combining these camps. So the locals built protective fences around their camp. In fact, some of the Indians that had come with Patterson knew how to build defensive structures.
Okay.
And they started building a specific type of fence that should have prevented the lions from coming into the camp.
I'm just thinking like how animals naturally protect themselves from lions. Like, don't elephants create like a barrier between, you know, everything outside and then their little babies on the inside?
Little babies stay to the inside for most lions, or for most animals that have lions as a predator. In most cases, though, they run. Or they're much bigger and they can fight a lion.
Gotcha.
In this case, these people are like trying to build a bridge with lions continuously attacking them.
How big is a lion in compared to a person?
I think they said the lions, like, nose to tail were 9 feet.
Okay.
Which is funny because that's around the same size as the Jersey Shore man eater. So,
really?
Just saying, yeah. Spoiler alerts. These 2 lions are on display somewhere. That's how fucking famous they are. And there will be pictures on our Instagram.
Okay.
I will just go ahead and say that. So the locals, when they got to their new camp, decided it would be best to always have fires burning in the camp, no matter what, to drive out the darkness so that the lions couldn't hide if they made it into camp. And guess what? It still didn't work. So one night, the camp awoke to the sound of screaming in one of the tents, and everyone woke up and rushed to help, and they found a worker who was being attacked by these 2 lions. The lions had entered his tent by tearing a slit in the back of it with their claws. It's like something out of a
horror movie.
It 100% is. And he managed to defend himself by putting his sleeping mattress between himself and the creatures. And when the other humans arrived to help, one of the lions sunk its fangs in and dragged off its prey into the night.
Wow.
It was only once the lions had just exited the camp and got beyond the fence, they weren't supposed to get past, that it realized it had been dragging the mattress and not the man. And they just dropped it and they escaped into the night. So when that happened, Patterson decided he was going to build a perch within the camp, kind of like a deer blind for anyone who's ever seen a deer blind.
Okay.
And it's a crow's nest, essentially, like you would see on a ship. So he could keep an eye out for these lions and hopefully shoot them if they came close.
Like those structures in the village where they have on the edge of town, they have those buildings that you just sit in to see all the view around the village.
The movie The Village?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I mean, that's just like a watchtower.
Okay.
But in this particular case, it's basically like...
It's just in a tree?
It's a hunting blind in the center of camp that he built on a pole. This one is not in a tree. This is an area that they cleared for camp, and he's like, I'm going to build a spot that I can see the camp and outside the wall so I can see if these fucking lions show up. So he does this. He feels better about this. He's going to try and capture them or kill them, most likely kill them, and they still manage to evade him. So during the day, the workers would still be attacked out of nowhere too. Like, they'd come into the camp at night, and that's sort of where the ghost in the darkness, I feel like comes from, is that they would come at night, but they would also still attack them during the day. And when the men were able to chase off the creatures or help someone else quickly, the victim of the attack would escape with their life, but sometimes they were attacked by a fucking lion. They still have very severe injuries, like very deadly injuries if not treated properly.
And they don't have all the medication and stuff that we have these days.
They have, yeah, obviously, yeah. But they have some stuff in the camp because they knew it was a problem, so they set up a hospital tent in the camp because of how frequent these attacks were.
Okay.
I would like to pause for a brief moment to mention one thing. I haven't stated any numbers about how many people were killed yet. The numbers themselves have a bit of a debate around them, which I will talk about at the end of the story, but just know the tally is coming. Okay. Something to keep in mind when you hear this next part. So one worker that was attacked and injured but not dragged off had to be put into the hospital as a result of his injuries.
Okay.
That night, despite Patterson being in the lookout scanning for the man-eater's approach, they managed to sneak into the camp, cut their way into the hospital tent, and drag away the injured man.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Shut
they
up.
They came after this dude that they didn't manage to kill that same day.
No way.
So people are like afraid of these things. At this point, like, there's no way everyone's not like, these are demons. Like, these are creatures of evil.
You gotta be lying.
I hate you so much. So This guy gets dragged away. Basically, this is the breaking point for everyone where they're just super freaked out. Patterson orders the amount of people on guard to be increased, the walls to be reinforced, and the hospital tent to be relocated in case the fucking lions come back in, so and they can't keep dragging off the injured, because they go after injured things. That's just what they do. The next night, the lions made their way into the camp again, despite the increased guard and the walls being reinforced. Found the hospital tent again, despite it being relocated, and this time dragged away the water carrier.
Do you think they smell the blood or something in the hospital tent?
I don't fucking know. All I know is that they took away the person that brings water to the injured people this time. So in the morning, Patterson's so pissed, he decides a search party is going to go looking for the guy who got dragged off. They returned, and all they had was his hand and his head. The rest of his body was never recovered. So this is horrific shit.
Yeah.
After that, Patterson changed his tactics. He moved the hospital tent again, and he put a railroad car, like a boxcar, where the old hospital tent had been located, and then he put cattle inside with the intention of setting a trap for the lions. Like, they're gonna come back to this spot, they're gonna hear the cattle in this boxcar, they're gonna attack it, and we're gonna fucking catch them. Like, that's the idea.
I have a feeling they're too smart for that shit.
Obviously. So he stays up, and the camp's doctor also decides to stay up with him to spring this trap. The lions do show up that night. They make their way into the boxcar, unbeknownst somehow to Patterson and the doctor. They kill one of the cattle that's in the boxcar.
Okay.
They drag it away. The animal's too big for them at this point to drag through the fence in any way, shape, or form. It's at this time that Patterson and the doctor noticed that they had gotten in there, killed one of these creatures, and dragged it away.
Cows are huge. How do you not hear a falling cow in a boxcar?
I mean, I know he was an army dude or whatever, but he sounds like he was really shitty at the job of hunting lions, unfortunately. Ugh. So they notice, oh no, one of the cattle's missing and there's a blood trail. So they follow it. They get to the wall and they see this cattle has not been dragged out of the camp. The lions were not able to do it. It's totally fucking dead.
Okay.
They follow the tracks and they notice something peculiar. The lions have not left the camp.
No.
They're in the camp still.
Oh my god.
And at this point, the doctor and Patterson realize they are now being hunted by the lions. So they find a spot within the camp where they feel like they could defend themselves, and they sit and they wait for these creatures to show up and make a run at them. And one does. One shows up and charges them, and in the process, Patterson manages to shoot this lion in the mouth. It breaks off one of the creature's canine teeth, and it has to flee. So it flees, and for just under 3 weeks, around 20 days, the lions are not seen in camp again. Some people breathe
That's a nice reprieve.
Yeah, some people breathe this huge sigh of relief. They feel like the lions probably won't come back now that they know that there's at least something formidable here that can hurt them. Patterson did not think that way. I will now pause again to let you know these events are told by those that survived in the particular book known as Building Railroads in Africa, a fun guide to meeting friends and befriending kitties.
You're lying.
Obviously. It's called The Man Eaters of Tsavo. That's literally the name of the book.
Oh, okay.
So, jumping back into the story, Patterson used this time to prepare for the lions to come back. He built a metal trap in the railway car, in the boxcar, that was essentially the cage from Mousetrap, the board game.
Shut up.
He literally built a cage that was suspended at the top of the boxcar, where if it was triggered, it would collapse, and then you don't get the cheese or whatever fucking happens in Mousetrap. I can't remember.
I've never played that game.
I played it once and nothing worked.
It looks fun.
It did look fun. But he builds this thing and he decides, I'm going to use myself as bait.
No.
And he puts himself in the boxcar. He has this cage hanging in the boxcar. I'm guessing there was enough space where the lion could get into the boxcar, trigger the cage to fall, and it wouldn't be able to get to Patterson. That's what I'm guessing his plan was. So the lions, shocker, are again smarter than Patterson. So he's hanging out in this fucking boxcar, waiting for them to show up. And they do show up after about 20 days once he's built his trap. They show up and they're like, we're not going to the fucking boxcar, we're going to the tents again. So they go to the tents and they drag a worker away and they devour him 30 yards away from the camp because there's no one in the fucking crow's nest looking out for them. And they're just like, we're just going to fucking eat this guy.
What?
And they do. And the people in the camp nearby listen to this guy get dragged away. And they sit there and shiver in fear, hoping they're not the next person.
Oh my
And then
God.
they listen to him scream as he's being eaten alive by lions. And they also hear that wonderful sound of their friend literally being eaten The lions would stay away from the camp for like several days, sometimes a week or two, and then they would return and drag another worker away. This cycle lasts for months at this point.
This is just an easy food source for them at this point.
Yeah, it 100% is. So that was April when all that shit kicked off. By December, so we're in December now, 9 months later, all but a handful of workers have embraced the motto, fuck this job, and quit. There were very few folks left behind to even work on the bridge. Patterson is 100% dedicated to hunting these creatures down, and he finally calls in backup. And on December 3rd, 1898, over 20 police officers from a local town arrive to hunt the lions with Patterson. That same night they arrive, the lions come back into camp.
What are the odds?
One of these lions finally goes into the boxcar with the mousetrap. The cage comes down, he triggers it, all the kids, I don't know, like, yay. I haven't seen the commercial in a long time. Patterson and police rush over to the scene as soon as they hear the thing come down. They just start shooting into the boxcar, into the cage. The lion somehow escapes the fucking cage.
These don't sound real.
And runs off into the night.
It's like it is a ghost in the darkness.
That's why the movie was made and the book was written, because people were just baffled at how this happened. So the police are all stunned after this. They have no idea how this thing got out of the cage, no idea how it even managed to move after how many rounds they shot into it, and they decide, we're all going into the wilderness in the morning, and we're going to find this thing, because clearly it's wounded, it's probably going to die. They search for the lion for 5 days.
Wow.
Before they say, fuck this, we quit. And not only did they quit, and they left. They basically told Patterson, like, shit out of luck. We couldn't kill him. We're not staying to get killed by these things. They give him a better rifle than the one he has been using to hunt the lions, and they leave. Like, thanks a bunch.
I mean,
bye, guys.
What are you supposed to do? If you've spent
He
so
has
much
a job
time.
to build that bridge, and that is exactly what he's going to do. On December 9th, 6 days after the police had come, the day after they had left, the lions return, and kills a donkey from camp, drags it off into the brush, and the workers and Patterson can actually see where the lion is feeding on the carcass for once. And Patterson tells his workers, all right, go over there and make a bunch of noise so it comes out in the open. And the workers all look at him like, are you fucking serious? But he somehow convinces them to do it. And the lion does come out into the open. And when the lion comes out, Patterson shoots at it, finally wounding it with the new rifle, and it runs off before he can kill it. Rather than track the creature, because he's worried that if they go out after it, they'll get killed by the other lion, because there's not a lot of people left, he figures it's going to come back and get this donkey that is killed, because it's clearly feeding off it, so it might be hungry at this point.
Yeah.
So he built himself a very hastily assembled another blind, this time in the tree above the donkey carcass. He's like, I'm just going to hang out in the tree, and I'm going to wait for this fucking thing to come back, and I'm going to shoot it. So he hangs out on the platform all day. Night hits. He's waiting for the lion to come back, when it suddenly dawns on him that the lion might come back and not be looking for the old kill. And sure enough, when he thinks of that, he starts paying more attention to the surrounding brush and realizes there is something moving through the bushes surrounding the tree, not near the donkey, that is basically stalking where he's at in his platform. The lion is hunting him. It's not coming to get its kill again. Okay. So one account I read two specific accounts. One account I read states that Patterson fired 2 shots and 2 shots only. Another account I read is from history.com, and it states that Patterson fired multiple shots into the bush before the lion emerges, attempting to get up on the platform. It doesn't state that it climbed the tree. It sounds like it was just basically trying to get to him because it wasn't very high. I'm not clear on this. What I can tell you is that he manages to shoot it. Once it collapses, he fires 2 additional shots into the bush where it falls, and then he just waits for any sign of movement to shoot at until finally nothing moves. He decides he's going to climb down there and check, and thank the Lord, one of these lions is finally dead. He managed to shoot it in the heart. If this was a movie, he'd get down there, he'd be searching through the brush, the lion would pop out, he'd be like, clever girl, and that would be the end of it.
That's Jurassic Park.
That's not what happened. He actually killed one of them. So 1 down, 1 to go. The other lion at this point seems to ramp up its attacks, and it gets pretty brutal. So the next day, the last man-eater comes into camp, attacks 2 goats, kills them, doesn't even drag them off. It just shows up to kill things, probably because it's pissed off.
It's pissed, yeah.
No one arrives in time to stop the attack. or kill the lion. They get there and these things are just eviscerated. Patterson decides, well, apparently it's going after goats now. So he takes 3 goats, leaves them out in the open, ties each one of them down with the railroad tie, which if you've never seen them, they're really long fucking spikes.
Yeah.
So basically puts them on a leash and takes the railroad tie and just hammers it into the ground and leaves them as bait for the lion to come back. So the lion does show up and attacks the goats that he had put out as bait. He shoots at the thing, and it takes one of the goats that it kills, drags it away, somehow manages to dislodge the railroad tie that had been driven into the fucking ground, and drags away the goat and the railroad tie and the rope all together at once.
That's nuts. Those ties literally hammer into the ground and keep railroad tracks down that trains run over.
Yeah, and this thing is just like, I'm going to drag this fucking goat with such force that I'm going to take it with me, and that's exactly what it does. So Patterson and the remaining workers went searching for the creature the next day, and despite finding it, are unable to wound it. Patterson doesn't sound like he's the best shot. I'm wondering if he's at this point a complete fucking drunk because of how insane this is.
He's not wearing his
and
glasses.
He can't shoot straight. What the hell is happening here? But again, Patterson sets out bait, and this time he builds himself another platform directly above the goat to wait for the lion to show up because he's like, I'm going to kill this thing. There's no way it's going to get away from me this time.
This thing is too smart. It's obviously going to see the platform you've built over the goat.
You would think, but finally the lion arrives, attacks all these goats he's put out as bait, and Patterson manages to shoot it twice.
Okay.
It leaves the goats and runs away, and despite following its trail immediately afterwards, he's unable to locate the last man-eater. They wait 10 days. After 10 days, Patterson tells the remaining men, the lion's dead. I shot it twice. It crawled off into the bush. It died. We just can't find it. That same night, the lion comes back and attacks another worker. He manages to scramble into a tree to avoid the attack. Well, he doesn't avoid the attack. He gets attacked, but he avoids death by going into a tree. The lion runs away. Patterson decides to pick the exact tree the worker ran into to put another stand in it. He waits. And the next night when the lion comes back, he managed to shoot it 2 more times, and again, it runs off. So the next morning is December 29th, 1898. He rallies the workers together that are still left, and they went looking for this thing again, this time encouraged by the fact that it had now been shot 4 times. And after a long search, they managed to locate the last surviving Savo Man Eater, which was still alive. And upon being discovered, it charges at the hunting party, and Patterson shoots it twice more, and it finally dies. The nightmare finally comes to an end on December 29th, 1898. The railroad company gives an official total of individuals killed by the 2 lions, and there's 2 numbers. There's the railroad company's number, and then there's the number by everyone else once they all go through everything. So the railroad decides that the total amount of people killed on the project by these 2 lions is 28 people, which is insanely high. That's like 5 times higher than the Jersey Shore man-eater and all the attacks that inspired the movie Jaws. I can't even imagine having 28 people dragged away by lions, let alone like 28 people I knew and was working with. So Patterson, he goes through and he goes to the doctor of the camp, the surviving workers, and they go through and they decide, like, let's look into every missing worker, everyone we found, and they come up with their number. Then they go to the railroad company and they say, where the fuck did you guys get your number from? And a representative of the railroad states they based their number off of how much human meat they believed the animals consumed.
Oh, that's dumb.
Meaning if these 2 lions showed up right now, they kicked in the door, they dragged Robin and I off, and they only ate half of her and half of me, the railroad company would put the death total as 1, despite the fact that we were both dead. So even with this insane bullshit, absolutely asinine way of counting, they still estimated that these 2 lions killed a total of 28 people.
So it's astronomically more than that. It's gotta be.
For the folks who disappeared before they started looking or paying attention when they just assumed they were quitting the job and running off into the wilderness, or for the folks who were never found after they actually started paying attention, or for the ones who were killed and not consumed because they were just killing for sport, they never got counted by the railroad.
Wow.
Patterson does his own count after he goes to all those folks, takes into account the entirety of the events that had unfolded prior to him showing up, and once he was there, speaks with the workers, the locals, all the people that he knew that he brought with him from India, and the doctor. His total body count is 135 people. 135 people in 9 months. I had less people in my graduating class in high school, for Christ's sake.
Your graduating class is so small.
It's like 116. Patterson writes the aforementioned book entitled The Man Eaters of Tsavo, which gets published in 1907 and eventually gets adapted into a movie in 1996 called The Ghost and the Darkness. Val Kilmer plays Patterson in that movie. Did not know that. Also, it has been loosely adapted or the material included in like 5 or 6 other movies, some video games, including a legendary creature in World of Warcraft in an island I've never been to. I used to play that game all the time.
Up.
And it's a giant lion, and its name is Savo something, and they took the original language that that was spoken in the area this happened, and they translated the Ghost and the Darkness into it.
Wow.
And that's what Savo blah 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 blah, the creature is in World of Warcraft.
That's crazy.
So, some interesting things to note here is that after this is all over, the bridge is completed, the railroad's finished, and by like 1930, it's completely fucking abandoned. Like, they just don't wind up using it at all.
God.
25 years after the events, Patterson decides to sell his 2 favorite floor rugs, which were the lion's skins that he took with him and turned into rugs because he finally managed to kill them, basically.
I would too, okay? If I had that many people die and this thing hunt me, and if these things, I do not support, going out and hunting poor safari animals.
But this is a lot different.
But this is like...
These things were basically demons in lion skin.
Self-defense. These things were killing people.
I mean, they intruded on its natural habitat. Oh, we will give you that. But 135 fucking people is a lot of people to be taken and killed, and in some cases eaten by lions.
It's just like, wouldn't you want to be like, yeah, I lived through that.
Yeah,
I had to deal with
those 2 lions
this.
right there, those rugs I got over there killed 135 people. So he finally decides to get rid of them, and he sells them for a sum of $5,000 in 1924.
How much is that
to
in
the
US
buyer?
money
I
now?
did not calculate it.
Damn it.
To the buyer, who still own it to this day, the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, Illinois.
Are those the lions that are in the glass?
They are on display.
What?
The skins were repaired. The jaws, at this point, not the jaws, the skulls, the skeletons have all been digitally recreated through 3D printing. They basically reassembled these lions, put their actual skin back on them. Hopefully they don't become possessed and somehow escape. But you can still look at these things. They're in the Field Museum in Chicago, Illinois today. They got them in very poor conditioning because apparently they haven't really been treated well after they killed 135 fucking people.
Well, I mean, they were shot the fuck
But they look incredible now. The pictures I will include on our Instagram are a picture after the first lion was killed, where they basically just sort of lay it down so it looks like the kitty cat's napping, and they prop up its head. And then the second one, which looks the same way. It doesn't look like they've been hurt, but you can definitely tell they're being propped up.
Oh my
the
God.
picture from the Field Museum display of these 2 creatures. And then one more that I found that I've already forgotten because it's almost 3 a.m. So... The last thing I will talk about is when people look back at this case and they say, okay, we're not even going to argue the number because it's clearly higher than 28, might be lower than 135. That number, whatever it is still absolutely insane. What the hell caused these things to kill people? Because even as they continued building the railroad and other projects in similar areas, nothing like this ever happened, especially on this scale before. There's a few things that are mentioned. 1, there was a plague in 1898 of cattle, where cattle were dying all over the African continent. A lot of cattle would roam wildly, which would be hunted by lions, which means that they could have been starving. When anyone brings that up, people are like, yeah, these weren't starving for 9 months. They were killing for fun. They weren't even eating half the things that they were killing. So that one is taken into consideration of why maybe they started killing. There were dead bodies that used to wash up on shore in the river from folks that would try and cross the river or swim across the river before the bridge was built, because it apparently was a very difficult swim.
Okay.
For lions that were scouring for a water source, this is probably where they would go, and if they found a deceased human being's body, they might feed upon it, and maybe got a taste for human blood that way.
Yeah.
And the third one is that there was a nearby tribe that would have partial cremation ceremonies where they would discard the human remains that were left over after the partial cremation, and then the lions could have been scavenging that, eventually developing a taste for human flesh and blood. Either way, it does not explain the incredible aggressive behavior or the way that they really seemed to target specific individuals. The one that creeped me out the most when I was going through this is the dude that survived the attack while working on the railroad and then got dragged out of the fucking hospital tent.
That's like trauma. Well,
that is just like,
it's traumatizing, but he's dead.
That's a scene in a movie. I don't know if it's actually in The Ghost in the Darkness where you just be like, that would never happen. There's no way that would ever happen.
You
and
would
just
think.
Hearing about it, it's just like, maybe they made that up, but it's just so horrific. Like, why would you even need to include that? And it's not even to sell books. It's like all these other people agree that this is exactly how it happened as well. So, yeah, I did not realize the scale that these two lions literally murdered on. They weren't even hunting for sport. They were like hunting out of hatred and malice. And it just certainly seems to me like it's something out of a movie that apparently actually happened. So,
nice.
But that, my spooky friends, is the story of the Savo Man Eaters.
Well, thank you for that terrifying topic.
You're welcome. I could not help but think I kind of wish these kitty cats were around today to go after your Twitter killer. Because that seems like someone that they would enjoy devouring, but...
It's alright. He's, on death row.
He has his just desserts coming to him, so... but yeah, that is the next installment in Man Eater May. I have at least one more that I definitely want to cover, and I'll try and find another one so that I can have the entire month be about things as horrific as this. So, thank you to the inspiration from the community. I think that this has been a really fun way to start off the month of May. And one more time,
I mean, for your topic, mine's not so fun, but yeah.
Well, obviously, yeah. But yeah, that said, thank you so much for anyone who listened. We sincerely appreciate you. If you have some sort of a story that you would like to share with us, whether it's paranormal, true crime, could be about man-eating lions, anything like that, you can reach out to us at the email address storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on contact us, or you can hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scariyishpodcast. Twitter is @scariyishpod, and Instagram is @scariyishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scariyishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get ad-free. Everyone loves ad-free. I know I do. And there's also physical merch tiers. I just sent out stickers for this month. And I think it's the night crawlers. They're the
pajama pants monsters.
Yes, they're the Fresno night crawlers. So hopefully you folks are into that. And if you're not into the monthly donation thing, you can always go to ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast, and those are one-time donations. All your donations go to helping us upgrade our studio setup, kind of keep us going, help us pay bills, help us pay like hosting fees, all that fun stuff. So thank you so much.
Indeed. That is everything we have for episode 178, so go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.